Welcome to the Cherry Picker After Dark, the Patreon exclusive version of the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people. I'm your host, Zack Cherry, and with me as always is...
Why can't you treat me like I would be treated by any stranger on the street? Eddie of Edward is Truth.
Because I'm not one of your fans. Did I get it right?
And then I kill you.
You kill me, yeah. We are talking about Mommie Dearest, released September 18th, 1981. This is a movie.
It certainly is.
It is certainly a movie. It is a cult movie, which is, I guess, kind of horror adjacent in a way, because it's pretty fucking scary in parts. Like, I think that Joan Crawford, as portrayed by Faye Dunaway, could possibly be up there in the echelon of horror figures like Mrs. Voorhees. Or Margaret
Norma
White.
Bates.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those.
Absolutely. And with the Cherry Picker After Dark, we've kind of delved into, more cult films in the past. So we've done Jawbreaker, Wild Things, Cruel Intentions, Batman Returns. We did back in December for Christmas. So we're getting back into them because there's a lot of fun stuff here, I would throw this on my horror movie shelf. So I think it's definitely belongs there. But I don't know. Why don't you kick us off, because you are the Mommie Dearest aficionado here. I'm relatively new to it.
Yeah. You're right in terms of the horror adjacent, because I remember being terrified of it when I was a child and watching it often. It was on the television all the time. And I mean, like, back in the day when we had, like, network TV, not cable. We had commercial interruptions, and, I don't remember how they handled the fuck with me fellas of it all. But no, I remember it, and they didn't cut very much of the movie, so it probably ran like 3 hours with commercials on television.
So
yeah.
This is rated PG.
Yeah.
Because PG-13 didn't exist at the time, I don't believe. So I
not yet.
Initially, like, it was going to be rated R, and I think that was the intent. But then, for whatever reason, the MPAA, I guess they're called the MPA now.
No.
Yeah, sure. But they're just like, yeah, sure, we'll give you PG. You don't have to cut anything. So
yeah, right? Maybe it's because she only said fuck once.
I feel like her face is saying fuck all the time, though. Like, that's because I remember, I've seen this twice now. Like, the second time I watched it last night. But, like, I recall more fuckage than just the one. So it's just her. It's in her demeanor. Like, she's just, like the whole, like, the desecration of the rose garden. Like, that just feels like a murder scene in and of itself that should probably be rated R.
I mean, to get into it, like, this is a camp classic. Now, it was not made with that intention, though, which is probably why it's a camp classic now. Mm-hmm. But I, as I was watching it, this particular screening, things, you get reminded of things. And one thing that I was reminded of was, I feel like the movie takes a sharp turn because there's things you could kind of laugh at. And, I always love the moment where the reporter is taking photos of Joan and Christina when Christina's a young girl played by Mara Hobel. And they're wearing the matching dresses at, the kiddie birthday party with the ponies and the carousel and the whatnot.
It's like, it's The Omen, but nobody's jumping out of windows.
Right. And that reporter, she realizes she has a grass stain on her skirt, the little girl does. And she's like, I'll just go, have it taken care of. And she's like, no one will see that, darling, which is an interesting moment for Joan to be saying that. But I guess at that moment, the stardom, the command and the demands of being a star, like, superseded any kind of OCD impulses she might have had. But that's when the reporter says, actually, or the photographer, actually, Miss Crawford, it might read and gives her that look with those wide eyes, as if to let her know, read. And I always laugh at that. But for me, the turning point is when she is hacking away at the Rose Garden after she gets fired by MGM in an evening gown. Like that.
Well, she went out drinking before. Because that wasn't the same thing she was wearing during the firing.
I don't even know if she went out drinking. I wonder if she just went home. My headcanon was, she just went home and decided, I want to feel pretty. So she put on a ball gown and went out into the garden and thought, I never wanted these roses. I'm going to get rid of all these roses. It just flipped out.
So, the scene you mentioned at the birthday party, that's actually a really good example of, and we'll say this and then we'll kind of get into the premise because we're already delving deep into things. Because I enjoy this movie. I think it's, a treasure to a certain point. I don't love it as much as you do. I saw your Letterboxd. You gave it 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
I think it's a 3.5. It's a solid 3.5. And that scene that you're talking about, it just that was confusing to me for the reasons you mentioned, because it's very inconsistent with the character, because Joan would be the one that would be like, Christina, go change your dress or whatever, not the other way around, unless you're looking at it through the perspective that, okay, the daughter is terrified of this woman, and it's just I'm gonna do this because this is what I've been trained to do. So that kind of encapsulates the two kind of threads of this movie, and why it's so disjointed for me is that is this a movie about a daughter who has been subjected to years and years of abuse by her mother, or is this a movie about Joan Crawford trying to stay relevant in Hollywood? It's the two kind of, they run in tandem, but they don't really always operate together, and because of that, there's not really a through line to this. This whole movie is just sort of just vignette after vignette of manic episodes, whether it's just high highs or low lows, and it's just there's not really I can go along for the ride, and there's definitely the scene you mentioned, just the high camp of the Rose Garden, but it gets to a point where it just sort of the movie, I guess the seriousness takes over, probably the last third, and it just sort of is a slog until the very end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So first off, specifically to address the first thing you were talking about with the stain and everything, I also think that I think the way I kind of solve the riddle in my head as to what's really going on with that scene is also the Joan that the crowd gets to see, which is no, darling, don't worry about that stain. No one will ever see it. And the Joan behind closed doors who was how did that stain get on your dress? Something like that. So I think that's what's going on there. But in the broader sense of it, what is it about? I think the creative team behind the film was trying to figure that out the entire time, I think, all the way through the editing room. When it was first released, I think it was done so with, from the moment it was conceived to the moment it was released, I think the intent was to release it as a biopic of grand dame, kind of oversized, what's the word I'm looking for? Spectacle. Yeah. For your consideration, thank you very much, Academy. And what ended up coming back to them was a bunch of people bursting out into fits of laughter in scenes where they, were not intended to. But, so, and then I understand what followed was Paramount and the creative team decided, we need to find a new way. Okay, people are laughing, so maybe we should deliver it as a camp film. Yeah. Maybe we should, they tried hiring drag queens. Yeah.
I was going to say to that effect, because you said that it's now it's kind of, developed this campy cult status, but it's just that's what you're saying is true, is from the get-go, when they realized that this was not going to be this dramatic Oscars darling that they thought it was going to
Right.
be. It's just like, let's just tell everyone that it's a camp movie, and that was like Paramount's route, and then it really pissed off the writer director. They're just like, this was not the movie or what we had intended for this thing. And obviously,
right.
you know, the Faye Dunaway of it all will get into.
Yes, we will. But the thing was, initially, when they were trying to push the camp thing, like they hired drag queens to come with like wire hangers to pass them out to people and stuff like that at particular screenings. And the thing is, I think John Waters said it best in his definitive commentary on the Blu-ray, which I just happen to have right here. It's like slipcover, and it opens up, and you get Portrait of Joan right there, or Portrait of Faye Dunaway.
The original
right there.
key art.
The original movie poster, yeah. And but the way he put it was, the perception was always that the certainly the LGBT community felt a little manipulated and a little coerced, because you can't kind of manufacture a camp hit. The people have to bring their own wire hangers, and they have to hold their own screenings. It has to, it has to be something that's invented by the people. Cult status isn't something that you can sell until it already exists. Then you can sell it all you want. But it took a while, like, because for a long time it was just thought of as a bad movie. I know Faye Dunaway won the Razzie for worst actress of the year.
It swept the Razzies.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I think that's really, really stupid, because I think it's a terribly flawed film, horribly uneven film. But I never feel the slog, because for me, it's either vastly entertaining because of how over the top it is, or it's engaging because there's some really valid work going on between Faye Dunaway and Diana Scarwid in a really quiet, intimate scene that nobody ever remembers and nobody ever really talks about when they talk about the first 5 things they remember about this film. And we can get into those too later.
Yeah.
But,
well, you mentioned this idea of drag queens coming to these events with wire hangers, and that to me is like very evocative of William Castle marketing gimmicks, because Joan Crawford even was in Straight Jacket. Directed by William Castle, and there was like a whole thing where they were like giving out little fake axes or just like little paper axes and stuff. And there's definitely moments in this where Faye Dunaway is kind of capturing the essence of like Joan Crawford in Straight Jacket. So it's just interesting that you mentioned that, because there's that's another thing. Like Faye Dunaway, I think she said that this was an exploitation movie or something to that effect. So anyway, we're gonna get into all of that, but like I said earlier, this is the Cherry Picker After Dark, so this is a Patreon exclusive. So if you want to get full access to the whole episode, you can head over to my Patreon account, Zack Cherry, ZACKCHERRY, and subscribe at the Freddy Krueger tier. That will give you access to every episode of the Cherry Picker After Dark that comes out every month. So there's like a huge back catalog of them. I think we're at like episode 25 or something. I've lost count. Somewhere in there. So you'll get access to all of those. And other perks too. If you are even supporting us at the entry level tier, you get early access to all of our episodes, so that comes in handy if you want to have something to do on the weekend, because you got nothing else to do. Sometimes
have us on while you're washing the dishes.
On the weekends, I like to relax. I don't like to go out and be social. Like that's a nightmare for me. So, there's other people like that. I think maybe.
Especially post 2020, I think a lot of us going out is still a chore sometimes,
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, there's tons of other benefits if you do support over there, so check it out, and you'll get access to this full episode. But having said that, I do want to thank some of my Patreon supporters. and supporters of the podcast. So thank you to Kyle Beard, Sam Levy, Khalil Young, Brady James, Ali Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horror Slut 95. I've got a new one, Bruce the Genetic Jackhammer Rando, Gary Blasick, Sean Flanagan, Josh Carr, Michael Boswell, Brandy Beebe. Those are all the Michael Myers tier supporters. And then thank you to Eric Champney, Daniel Saturn, Tamika Jones, and Garrison Nichols, all the Ghostface tier supporters.
Yay, everybody!
Thank you. And thank you to our, and also, this is the last episode being edited by Boy Cried Wolf, who's been with us for a year now editing. Taking over, his post is going to be J. Voorhees Gallotello. So thank you to both of them. And we're going to miss Boy Cried Wolf, especially. Yeah. But, you know, the show must go on.
That's right.
So what is Mommie Dearest about?
Oh, I didn't prepare anything, so I'll just read it.
Oh, okay. Are you going to do it? I
didn't know we were going to do it. We don't always do it for the After Dark. Yeah, I can do it in a voice. Who do you want me to, you want to be Christina or Joan? Or I could even be Carol Ann.
I think you got to do whatever feels right for you.
All right. The abusive and traumatic adoptive upbringing of Christina Crawford.
A little louder.
Hands. Oh, shit.
No, keep going.
I have to be let it. In the hands of her. Of Joan
I should be like Joan Crawford. Louder!
No, that's Mama Rose from Gypsy. Sing out, Louise! At the hands of her mother, Scream Queen Joan Crawford, Mommie Dearest, 1981.
So much passion. So much passion.
I mean, everybody knows Joan Crawford wants a baby. She gets it. She raises it. She abuses it, and then she does. Then she puts on appearances, rinse, repeat until the end, until she dies. I mean,
this movie has no plot. It's just like I said. It's just like all these non sequiturs, and then all of a sudden Joan is dead, and leaves them no money. And I actually. Fortunately, on the IMDb trivia, it answered this question for me because I'm just like, what is the passage of time here? How much time in Joan's life actually goes by in this? And the answer to that is 39 years. So I believe Christina Crawford was born in 1939, and yes. Joan died in 1977.
That's
so
correct.
I mean, the movie starts before Christina's born, so there's sort of like
she's shooting Ice Follies of 1939, so at the earliest it's 1938.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when she turns around and goes, "Let's go." Yeah, that's Ice Follies of 1939 with her ice skates.
Well, the original opening for the movie was apparently it was going to be her filming and skating, and then she was going to fall and her leg was going to be bleeding and they were going to be tending to it, and she's going to be like, no, I'm going to go back out there, and she's going to go out and finish it with the bloody leg. I love the opening to I think that the best part of the movie, like outside of like the more audacious moments, is the introduction of Joan Crawford, because I love just seeing her routine, waking up at 4 a.m, doing the ice bowl thing, and just like getting in the car,
the hot water,
and then you're just seeing her hands. It's a lot of hand acting, and then finally getting the turnaround and just like that Stars entrance, and then the let's go.
Just watch her killing germs and closing pores. It always makes me. What I love about it is, in its own way. Again, this is why I could never dismiss this film, and why I think it's great, because it's achieving within the first few seconds what it took William Friedkin a few minutes, of screen time to get to, as far as the immersive quality of it all. Like, I think, as Exorcist has Regan's getting that spinal procedure done where they're putting the wire into her, and and everyone goes, ooh, and sees the blood coming out and go, ah, is to like the hands in the hot water with the brushing under the nails and the knuckles, and I'm just thinking about how dry my skin gets, and I'm just going, ow, 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 ooh, prickly. Yeah. But I also think, like, my God, like, she woke up at 4 a.m. and she suffers from the moment she wakes up, but for something, in sacrifice of, for something greater.
Well, it's just such a great setup for the character, and then unfortunately there's not really a storyline that follows other than like the bare essentials of what we already talked about. So it's almost like there's like a hint of just like greatness, and I know that you love the movie, but I just feel like it never lives up to sort of like what it promises at the beginning there.
Well, I mean, again, like I think it passed through maybe too many hands on its way to the screen, because initially I know that they wanted to base it off of the book by the real Christina Crawford, which is very different. I've never read it cover to cover, but I have read passages before. And I remember even reading, I wondered how they ended it, because I'm like, well, the movie ends with her making the decision to write the book. Does the book end with her making the decision, and you're reading it
how
now,
meta
something
would
like
that
that?
be? Yeah.
Yeah, right. But no, so I read it, and it ended, if I remember correctly, because it was some years ago, it ended with just Christina being at her mother's funeral and no one speaking to her, because the legend of Christina's quote-unquote bad behavior among Joan's friends, among the elites, the Hollywood aristocracy, who turned out for Joan's funeral, was always that Christina should have treated her better, and that Christina was a spoiled brat, and that Christina very, very ill-behaved and threw tantrums all the time, and no one ever thought why. What must she be lashing out against, Yeah,
it's so interesting. I mean, like, we're just delving into like the real people here, but it's just so interesting, like the legacy that's left behind, because it's like there's so many different accounts at this point of just like who was Joan Crawford, and we had the show Feud, right. and this, and just I thought it was great. I preferred over this. All right. You can roll your eyes all you want, Mr. Is Truth.
I just call it Mommie Dearest 2, because I think it's as accurate a depiction of what transpired between those two women as Mommie Dearest is of what happened between Joan and Christina.
Yeah, we know. Well, we know about we know about the whole Betty Davis thing at the Oscars and whatnot. So we know that like Joan Crawford, probably had quite a mean streak to her. So it's just like what is real and what isn't, just in terms of like the story. But like the Mommie Dearest, like the book, was really the first of its kind, the first like tell-all of like any celebrity. So like this was like a huge deal when it came out, and I mean, I don't know why they changed it so much, but according to Christina Crawford, she only saw the movie once, and she went to see it in the theater, and she was the only one there, and she never saw it again. And she apparently hated it because it was completely changed from what she had written, and it was almost like even more over the top than what her telling of her mother was. So it's just like this, even if people weren't like familiar with the story or going into it, one could see Mommie Dearest and just assume that, oh, this is like what Christina Crawford wrote about in her book, and she would be a spoiled brat for that. But it, I haven't read the book, so I don't know what the differences are in there, but no, it just for whatever reason, like that's gone on to obviously alienate her from all these people after the fact, whether it was like at the funeral or not. But there's a lot of people that, believe the story, and there's a lot of people that don't.
I mean, this is also another thing. I think a lot of the abuse that I believe Christina suffered at the hands of her adoptive mother was also not looked at as abuse at the time. These were parenting techniques. It was how to control an unruly, quote unquote unruly child. And even to preemptively kind of assert yourself, even there was something about the way that Joan was drilling Tina in the pool when she was making her do laps, and Tina's like, and I know that there are a lot of people of that particular generation, Christina Crawford's generation, who understand, or anybody who was raised kind of like in the mid 20th century. I know my parents can certainly have their own versions of this, where there were things you did to kind of toughen kids up, like they can't be too gotta, you gotta get, you got the world's a fact, and you gotta get out there and you gotta show them who you are and everything like that. And it's like, but why? Who's attacking me? Who am I? Am I going to war? Is that what you're telling me? Because it feels like the war is really between the two of us, because you for whatever reason, I have to dive perfectly. Why? I never told you I want to dive professionally. I don't, but it was just this kind of like, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it the way you can. And also, I think it came from the things that I glean from the movie in terms of its basis, like the things that I feel like are true in spirit, that I think Faye really wanted to convey about Joan Crawford, because she wanted to depict her as sympathetic as possible. She didn't want her to be just a movie monster, even though she certainly has those moments. But but I think what I really get is that Joan was herself abused, and a child who was raised with a lot of hardships and had to overcome them herself, and ironically enough created kind of like a palace for a child to live, how does she say it in the movie, live an advantaged life. And all she did was strip her child of the advantages she never had, because and she wouldn't bestow them upon her child but she had them within reach, because so was I too, just a kid. And it's like there's the part of you that wants to be a provider, but there's also the part of you that wants to tear the kid down so they can build themselves up again. And is that it's so complex. Like, is it motivated by jealousy? Is it motivated by like a genuine need to feel like an effective parent? I feel like both, and even more. I think all of that can be read, at least, if not in the material, certainly in the dynamics and in the performances of the movie.
Well, it's almost like at a varying points throughout the movie, it felt like the roles were reversed, in a sense that Christina, as this little girl, was actually the parent, and Joan was the child.
Yeah.
just with all the like the craziness, because it's like Joan is like the competitive one. Like, she's like, well, let's race, and I'll give you this just so she can beat her daughter at the end, and then just make it about her, and just and project her insecurities about competitiveness onto her daughter. And then it's like, she's like, well, I don't want to race you anymore. It's just like, oh my god, like, I'm gonna lock you in the pool house, and like, this and that, just like having these outbursts. So I kind of, I see the one side of it, where it's just like, I'm just gonna toughen my daughter up, or just make sure that she grows up having to deal with like the same hardships that I had to deal with. And there's the wire hanger scene in particular, because this is one that I'm just like, what is the motivation? What is the context behind this? Because it's just like, she's just goes in there, and it's just like, what does this have anything to do with her daughter? Like, that there's a wire hanger in there, and that she would have this meltdown, because it's not stated in the movie, and I don't know if that's in the book, but from what I saw online is that her mother worked in a dry cleaners at one point.
And so did she.
Yeah, so she associated that with like where she came from, and there was just like this huge fucking thing. So, I mean, I'm glad that I figured that out, because that was a huge question mark for me.
Yeah, and again, I think if the movie did more to kind of like deliver on the backstory, maybe it would seem a little less like, you know, I mean, I will use the word, it is an iconic moment. No wire hangers ever, but I think at the same time, like, I don't know, it felt like a rite of passage learning the backstory of Joan. Like, why do the wire hangers bother her so much? And then when I found out, it was like a little gift I got. And it's like, oh, I get to carry that into the scene whenever I watch it. And I do watch this movie pretty often, like pretty regularly, at least once a year. Mm-hmm. And I don't wait for the holidays either, but sometimes you want to have a little dark Christmas and you watch, because immediately what follows the wire hanger scene is their Christmas, isn't it? Is that it? I think that's what follows.
They're doing the radio interview.
Yeah, like, it's just like, well, first we're going to read, the night before Christmas, and then the children will open their Christmas presents, and then we'll all go to bed. Like, in that one, that's one thing. Okay, there's another thing. In terms of just, like, the characterization, I like pretty much the rest of the movie, as much as I'm just kind of like, yes, that's so on point, and other moments where I'm like, that is so far off the base, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because it's fantastic. With Faye Dunaway's portrayal of Joan, there are people who swear up and down that it is an epitomal portrayal, and that she, was channeling Joan Crawford, and I would never argue with those people because I see what they mean. But then there are other people who are like, it's just Faye Dunaway being Faye Dunaway. And now that I've seen more Faye Dunaway movies, particularly like Eyes of Laura Mars, or like movies that she made in the 70s, like leading up to that time, even in like moments in Supergirl, you watch her performances in those movies, and it is Faye Dunaway. There's that full-throated screaming, you're going to go upstairs until I've called you. Very Alicia Witt, I know you're thinking. But, even Wire Hangers, like, what's Wire Hangers doing in here, but I told you. She's always, again, to the back of the house. Those people in the cheap seats, they're going to get the same performance. And that's, I have no memory. I've seen Joan Crawford shriek in many of her films. I don't know what she was like in her life. But I've seen her manic and, hysterical in many of her films, being the screen's greatest, most notorious masochist. But I never saw her, open her throat like that. That's a Faye Dunaway affectation, or characteristic anyway. I don't think it's an affect. I think it's just the way Faye is. Anyway,
that's all we've got for the preview of this Cherry Picker After Dark. If you want to see the entire episode, head over to Patreon to subscribe. Other than that, thank you for watching, and we will be back next week with The Strangers, chapter